Have you received a jury summons? Are you nervous, anxious, maybe confused? It's all natural. Let's try and answer those questions today on The Lacrosse Lawyer. Welcome back, everyone. Attorney Craig Steger here, practicing in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. How are you today, Leah?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Today we wanted to talk about jury duty and jury selection.
Bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. It's funny. It's spent a little bit of time on Reddit and other groups, and it's a very common question that people have. Most of us, I think you get to be my age at least, if you've stayed in one place long enough, have probably been summoned for jury duty or at least gotten the notice. Not too many people have actually been on a jury. I've actually been on a jury, and of course I've tried a number of cases to a jury. So I wanted to kind of cover a lot of the common questions that people have, because it's one of the first things people do when they get a jury summons. They go on and they ask all kinds of questions. Okay, so should we cover those today?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So let me give my little soapbox speech here a little bit on the importance of juries, because this is something I actually do when I'm picking a jury, when I'm trying a case in front of a jury. So the jury system is one of the most unique features of the American court system, American legal system. Not all countries have the jury system, and I suspect the vast majority do not. It's one of the unique privileges that we have as Americans is a jury system, and I think it's sort of the quintessential American thing, because it is of the people, by the people, for the people. That is actually the people making the decisions. It's not the lawyers, it's not insurance adjusters, it's not corporations, it's not even the judge. It's common people, regular, everyday people that get called in for jury duty. And so I think it's one of those things that we ought to be very proud of and sort of look forward to if we can, if you're in that opportunity, if you're in the situation where you get called for jury duty. I know a lot of people have a natural dread of the process and don't want to go there. Maybe they're scared, maybe they don't want to miss work, maybe they don't, whatever. It can be an inconvenience, but I like to remind people that it is one of the most sacred protections that we have in our system. And I like to tell people, just remember this. Let's suppose you're in a situation where let's say you've been wrongly accused of something, or you're in a dispute with someone. You want to know that at the end of the day, a group of fair and impartial people will be there to, defend you or make the other side prove its burden of proof or award you whatever relief you're entitled to. And that only works if everyone takes it seriously. So when you're faced with a jury summons and you're like, I really don't want to do this, think about what you would want if you were in the situation of having to have a jury trial and have your case decided. Would you want good, honest, serious people there? And I think most of us would, right?
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I think maybe people have is like, how do juries get picked? How do people end up on juries?
Yeah.
And this varies. This actually can vary a lot by state and even counties within states. And there are actually two different, I would say, jury systems, maybe more if you consider like the military. But basically you have state courts and federal courts. And I think we're going to do a video, maybe the next one will be on the court systems, and I'll talk a little more about this.
Yeah,
But
that'd be great.
you have state courts and you have federal courts. Let's just talk about state courts. Each state court is typically broken down by county. I think in Louisiana they call them parishes, and maybe in New York, I don't know, maybe they're boroughs or something. I don't know, but it's basically your county is kind of the most local place of the court system. You can also have municipal courts and things like that. Those typically don't involve juries. And there are only certain types of cases actually where you have a jury trial, right? Civil cases and criminal cases are probably the most, and the ones that you typically don't have jury trials would be like family law or divorce court, probates and estates, things like that. Those typically are not. But they're on a county level, and so the county is responsible if there's a jury trial, if there's going to be a jury trial scheduled, to send out, to find out who's our eligible pool of people. I think you have to be 18 years old. I don't think you have to be a citizen or resident of the state. I'm not entirely sure, and that might vary by state or county. Yeah. But they pull basically voter records, driver's license records, maybe real estate records. Honestly, I don't know all of it. It's not like they limit it to people that can drive or limit it to people that own real estate. It's a whole bunch of different sources of information that they pull from to figure out who's potentially eligible. And then they randomly select, I don't know how they do it, but they randomly select a group of people and send them out a notice, and then usually send out a questionnaire in advance asking people to identify their name, address, usually occupation, and spouse's information. That's kind of the common information that people get asked for. So these notices go out with some instructions on either to call a certain number or show up at court on a certain time and date. And that's kind of how the process works in general terms.
So what if you get a summons and you're one of those people we talked about, well, you mentioned in the beginning, I'm dreading going, I don't want to go,
Yep.
and you ignore it? What would happen then?
Possibly nothing, but it can be a criminal offense. I'll be honest, having sat, tried a number of cases to juries I know there's people that don't show up. I have yet to see the judge send out the sheriff to round up those people, but it's within their power if they wanted to. So you want to show up for that, or at least respond to it. Let's say, here's an example. So our oldest son, he's a Marine, so he's in the military, and we got a summons in the mail for him a couple of years ago to show up, and he's in California. I don't know if maybe he could get leave to come back. I don't know, but we just contacted the clerk and said, look, he's in the military. He's not able to be here. And, they took him off the list. All we had to do was communicate to them. Maybe you've moved or something like that. It's a good idea to contact the clerk or whoever sends out the notices. But otherwise, you want to respond. You want to show up and be there. And in one of the first things that happens sort of at the beginning of jury selection is the judge asked if there's anyone here that has any major personal issues or things in their life that would prevent them from being able to do it, or be attentive to it. It could be maybe you've got a doctor's appointment or a funeral. I've seen that. Maybe you're getting married. Maybe you have a baby. Things like that. Those are things that can come up, but you can bring those up sort of at the very beginning of the process in the first day. And if there's enough people that get called, a lot of times you can get out then, but you don't want to ignore it entirely.
Good to know.
So that's kind of how juries are initially, like the pool is. And I would say this, depending on the state and depending on the type of cases, usually juries are 12 people, 6 people. I feel like in Iowa is it 8 or 10 people, but it's in that 6 to 12 person range. And depending on the length of the trial and kind of who's involved, if it's, let's say, for example, it's a lawsuit against a local business, they will call more people because there's more of a likelihood that the jurors will have some, let's say maybe they work for one of the parties or they have knowledge and experience with one of them. And so they'll kind of gauge how many people to call in. So they call way more than they need. So if you need 12 people, they may call 30 or 40 people to actually come in, because some people are going to be excused because, let's say, like I said, maybe they have a doctor's appointment. Some people are going to be excused for cause because they know some of the parties or something like that. And then still there's always peremptory strikes, which we can talk about in a little bit. So you always start with a much bigger group than you need, so that by the time it's done, you have the number of people that you need for a jury. If you don't have enough people, unless the parties agree, essentially it's considered a mistrial, and they send everybody home, and then they try it at another day.
I see.
So that's kind of the general process. So what happens when you show up on the first day? So here's kind of how it goes generally. And again, this will vary by both state and by county, and it'll depend a little bit on, are you a larger city, a larger county, or are you a more rural county? So people will get called in, and the judge will put everyone in the courtroom, generally in one big room, and they'll randomly call, let's say it's a 12-person jury, they'll randomly call like 22 people, because you'll have each party will have, let's say, 3 peremptory strikes. So that's 6 people. Plus you may have a couple of alternates. So that's 8. So 12 plus 8 is like 20. So maybe they'll have 20 people come up and just randomly pull out a group of the people randomly brought there that day to serve as the group that's going to be whittled down, if you will. And so what happens then is usually the judge will go through some preliminary instructions and questions, ask anyone, like the questions that we just went over, like, are you going to, does anyone here feel like they couldn't be here for job related reasons or health, whatever? And that's the time for people to say, look, judge, I have a funeral for this week. I have to be there. The judge may excuse you, things like that. And then the judge will ask, do you know any of the parties? Do you know any of the lawyers? The judge may tell the type of case that it is. Let's say it's a criminal case, and let's say it involves something that's maybe very sensitive for some people, and may ask if anyone's been through this before. Maybe that will make it difficult for someone to hear all the evidence and be objective and fair. And so the judge kind of does that at the very beginning. And sometimes people are excused for cause because they simply couldn't be there, or it'd be a great hardship for them. Maybe the judge excuses those people, and they'll bring in like 2 more people to replace them. So you lose a person, you bring another person up. So you always have that group of 20 people or so in the box at one time. So, and then once that's done, and in every county, every judge is a little different, but then it kind of switches over to the lawyers. So then the lawyers get to ask questions, and it usually starts with the plaintiff, the party bringing the case, or if it's a criminal case, I believe it starts with the prosecution, gets to ask questions of jurors. This is kind of the most organic part of a jury trial, is that jury selection, because you actually kind of get to talk freely with people. I really enjoy a jury selection because you do get some information on people in advance. Usually you get their names and occupation and spousal information, and you can try to do some internet research on people ahead of time, but you really don't know much about them until they show up. And so then you try to ask questions, and depending on the school of thought, you may be trying to build a relationship with that jury, build some credibility with them through the questions. So sometimes the presentation is more important than the questions, because you're trying to build a rapport with that jury through jury selection. So one lawyer will go, and then the other lawyer or other lawyers will go, and everybody will get a chance to ask questions. And then once that's done, then the judge basically hands a sheet, the bailiff actually does, to the first lawyer. They cross off a name, goes to the other lawyer, they cross off a name, goes back until we call those peremptory strikes, which can you excuse for anyone for any reason except certain protected classifications. So you're not supposed to kick someone off your jury because of their gender or race or things like that.
Not nationality, right? But
yeah, I mean, the common things that we, you can't discriminate against people in public. You're not supposed to discriminate against them on the jury. And so once that's done, then the judge basically excuses the people that were called, and then impanels the jury, and depending on the length, will oftentimes include 1 or 2 alternates on that. And no one knows who the alternates is until the end of the case. So the whole group will sit through all the evidence, and then at the end of the case, before they deliberate, the judge randomly calls 1 or 2 people, whoever, as alternates, and then they're sent home.
so those are like the secret shoppers of
Yeah,
the jury.
kind of, except no one knows who they are, including the judge, until the end. They call the names at the end, but it's
So who
in
decides
case
who they
someone.
are?
It's just random. It's just chance. So that if someone gets sick during a trial or has something come up, that way you don't have to, because if you didn't have alternates and someone could not show up, you could end up what we call a mistrial, because you don't have the required 10 people or 12 people or whatever it is at the end. It's a mistrial. Everyone goes home, and the parties would later have to come back for another trial. So the alternates are there in case you lose people along the way.
I see.
And I remember the last jury trial I had a month ago. I knew this was going to happen, but during my closing arguments, I had a couple of the jurors were crying, which I felt was a good sign for me. There was two women on the jury, and both of them ended up being the alternates, so they were not they were not on my jury.
Darn.
But that's just completely luck of the draw.
Darn.
Yep.
I had a question when you talked about how juries, when you get jurors, when they get their summons, that there's a questionnaire attached and that you're supposed to either send it back or answer it, like call a number. Where does this information get shared with the attorneys trying the case or with the judge, if that's what happens?
Yeah, every county's a little different, but you fill that out. In my experience, you know, and they don't ask a lot of private information. They ask, like I said, your spouse's name, usually where you work or the type of work that you do, and that information. Then the clerk will then share that with the lawyers for the parties. Sometimes a few days before trial, sometimes a week before trial, sometimes the day of trial. It depends on the court that you're in. But yeah, so that's kind of the basic information that gets shared with all the attorneys and the parties before the trial actually starts.
And that's not the voir dire list, or it is?
That is the voir dire. Well, so there's kind of two lists that we get as lawyers when we show up for a jury trial. One is the list of all the people. I call that the voir dire list. That's the and then attached to that usually is the questionnaire for each juror.
I see, like cover page info kind of thing.
Yeah, a long list, line by line, and then you get the individual jury questionnaires. And it's nice to get those as far in advance as possible, because when you get close to trial, you're getting ready, and it takes time to, research 40 people, look them up,
Yeah.
Can you find anything out about them? Are they on Facebook? Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, public information only, people. Don't worry.
Yep.
Do you get paid?
Yeah. So yes, but no. It's a very small amount.
That's what we want to know. Money.
Yeah.
How do I get paid? Make it worth my time.
Every county's a little different. It's usually a minor daily fee. I honestly don't know how much it is. It might be $25 a day, like 15 bucks a day. Maybe it's more. I know when I have a case that I want to request the jury, I have to pay a jury fee. I believe in Wisconsin it's $36 I have to pay for a 6-person jury, and it's like $72 if I want a 12-person jury. But I believe the jury gets paid more than that, and then mileage from your house to the courthouse. But honestly, for most of us, it's not anywhere close to substituting the wages that we get. And that's a good time to talk about that, because a lot of people are worried about, well, first of all, can your employer fire you for going to jury duty? I don't believe there's any exceptions to this, but no. So you can't be fired for going to jury duty, and if your employer threatens you or does anything like that, you might want to talk to a lawyer. But they don't have to pay you. Now, a lot of employers do have policies to pay people when they're on jury duty, and I think that's a really good. I think we do that. I hope we do that. But you can and are encouraged to pay your employees when they're in jury duty, but I don't think it's required. At least it's not required that I know of in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. It's possible there's some states that it is required. But so no, there's not really much pay involved. And for some people, if you're not getting paid while you're out, or if you're self-employed, that can be a real financial hardship. So I see that pretty much in every jury that I pick.
Yeah, saying I can't because of work.
Yep.
That's the line.
Yep. That may not be enough to get you off the jury, but my impression is most of the time, if the judge feels like there's enough people available, they will excuse people in that situation. But it's certainly not automatic, and you're not guaranteed to get off of jury for that reason.
Yeah, good to know.
So the way that the process works then is if you're selected on a jury, the judge will swear you in. You will
the whole thing, like the.
Yep, the jurors take an oath similar to how a witness takes an oath before they testify. But it's basically a promise to listen to the jury instructions. The big no-nos are don't talk about the case with anyone, including jurors. You're actually not allowed to discuss the case with each other until the very end of the case. Basically, you promise not to discuss the case with anyone else, not to go out and do any research, not try to look up the case or parties on the internet, and like not post about it on social media are kind of the big things. So you just take an oath, and then you basically sit there as a group and you listen to opening statements. The plaintiff or the prosecution typically goes first. Then once their side of the case is done, then it switches over to the defense. And then there's kind of jury instructions at the end that the judge gives all the jurors. And so we don't have to worry about not having legal knowledge, because the judge gives you the legal information, the standards that you need to have. And so you have the kind of the instructions at the end. Then each side gives their closing argument, and then the judge sends the jury out for deliberation. So that's when the alternates are picked, and then the bailiff takes the jurors back, and then once there, they pick one person to be the foreperson, just kind of the leader of the group, person that signs the verdict, and then you go in there and you deliberate and you go through the instructions and the verdict until you reach a verdict, or hopefully reach a verdict. Verdicts, I believe, typically have to be unanimous in criminal cases, but usually in civil cases, it's a majority. So like if you have a 12-person jury in a civil case, usually you need 10 jurors to agree one way or the other. You can have a couple of dissenting jurors on particular questions on the verdict. In a civil case, still have a verdict. If you have one person disagrees with the verdict on a criminal case, it actually results in a mistrial.
And not a hung jury.
That's what a hung jury is a jury that can't all agree one way or another. The judge will usually send people back and encourage them to keep talking, keep fighting, if you will, to try to reach a unanimous verdict on both sides. But that's, to be honest with you, that's how a lot of criminal cases, that's kind of the best case for the defense, other than a pure acquittal, is to have a hung jury, because at least you live for another day, basically.
Yeah. But no more arguments could be heard. Just more deliberation given time. Time deliberating.
Sometimes the jury, if you're back in the jury room, you can ask for more information. You can ask questions. You can ask to see certain pieces of evidence and things like that, but generally you're just back there. And jury deliberations can take anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours to a few days. It just depends on the nature of the case. So, yep.
So you were talking about how having legal knowledge isn't exactly necessary, but you said in the beginning that you have served on a jury before. Has your legal knowledge, and I mean, you're a practicing lawyer, did that help you? Are you not supposed to dwell on that? Are you supposed to kind of try to forget that and act like a layperson?
Yeah. I would not have let me on the jury. I mean, generally speaking, you don't want a lawyer on your jury, because the odds are that person is going to become the foreperson. I was the foreperson of our jury.
How surprising.
And we actually acquitted the guy. It was a criminal case.
Wow.
But without a doubt, I could have persuaded that jury to do whatever I wanted, because they were going to defer to me. And I'm just saying how it is.
Yeah. He's a lawyer, and everybody will listen to him. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, it was younger lawyers trying the case. None of them asked me about my practice.
But they knew you were a lawyer.
They would have, they would have known that. They didn't ask me. Maybe they researched and realized that I didn't do criminal defense anymore. But you still got to ask, I think. Another common question, they ask if anyone knows each other. Literally, my next door neighbor was on the jury with me. None of the lawyers asked that. I mean, those are questions that you would typically want to ask, and that's fine. I mean, we all have to start somewhere. I was not near as good at this the first time I did this as I am now, having done this quite a few times. But yeah, you typically don't want a lawyer on your jury, because that lawyer is just kind of naturally and by default, unless there's a judge on the jury, is going to have a lot of influence for sure.
So those attorneys, either one, could have done, like, taken you off the list. I don't remember the term, but they could have, like,
they certainly should have asked me about it. And then either one of them could have exercised a peremptory strike on me.
That.
Yeah.
Because of the reason, not because of your protected class, because you're an attorney, they could just say that was why. But they don't have to say why.
Yeah. Yep. So they probably should have. But I don't know, but but it is what it is. So so I was on a jury. My wife was actually in a jury this year, and that was a very kind of a profound experience for her.
Yeah.
She was in a situation where she was kind of the lone holdout and had to kind of like stick to her guns. And that could be really hard when you're in a jury, especially if everyone's in agreement but you or you and another person. You can really feel pressured to just cave or compromise or whatever. We all want to go home, whatever. And so that's why it's really, really important that each juror recognize that each of you are important and each of your opinions matter, and you shouldn't just compromise, if you will, to make other people happy. But I see it happen a lot. That's just one of the realities of jury trials.
Yeah. And we spoke about it in the past about for the medical malpractice trial that the other attorneys were pretty convincing when they told the jury, "Hey, it's a Friday. We could be done right now."
Yeah, that's one of the many reasons I don't do medical malpractice anymore. Is the rules there's special rules. Tends to be a lot of special rules in medical malpractice cases that I think benefit the defense, and one of those being the jury doesn't have to answer all the questions if they find the doctor wasn't negligent in the first question. It is what it is. I like jury trials. Not every case is tried to a jury. I've tried more trials, I think, to a judge. We call those bench trials than jury trials, but I still like jury trials. I'm very glad I was able to do, actually be on a jury. I'd like to be on a jury again, to be honest with you. But so if you're called for a jury, take advantage of it. Try to enjoy it and realize that it does actually serve a really, really important part in society. And you just never know when you might in the future need a jury of good, open-minded people to decide a very important issue for you or your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Pursue your civic duty, right?
Yep. Yeah. If we don't, it can be taken away from us. And so that's, I hope that's helpful. If people have other questions about jury duty, we'll link to the Substack article that I wrote on this.
Yeah. In
the description. I think there's more information over there, questions that people have about jury duty, jury selection, things like that. But certainly if people have questions about the process, don't hesitate to leave us a comment or go down to the description, send us an email. We try to do our best to respond to those if people do have questions, and if necessary, we can talk about it in a future video.
Yeah. Ooh, if I can pick your brain for the last second here. Is there any jury depiction in a movie that you think is somewhat accurate? Any movie that you would say, hey, you're called for jury duty, you should watch this because this isn't that bad?
Yeah.
And not a documentary.
Probably not.
Zero.
Similar to how, trials in movies and lawyers in movies don't really depict the real thing. The juries don't either. I'm trying to remember probably my favorite lawyer movie is My Cousin Vinny. The jury in that case may have been kind of close to how it works. The trial itself was nothing how it usually works. But the other one I was thinking of, and I can't remember the name of it, was it The Verdict? Well, there's one. I think it's a John Travolta film about some pollution and contamination in the water supply. I can't remember it. That's based on a real story.
Not the Aaron Brockovich story.
No, that's a good one too. I can't remember if that one went to verdict, but I mean, they do dramatize the actions of the lawyers and judges for the most part, because otherwise it's actually kind of a boring thing probably for most people. But the juries themselves are probably actually pretty realistic. So,
yeah, well, that's good. Well, thanks for letting us end on a little silly note.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, let me know if people have any other questions. Otherwise, I appreciate you people watching. Thank you, Leah, for showing up today.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Craig,
until
for sharing this information.
You betcha. Thank you, everyone. And until next time,
Thank
everyone.
you. See
Have a
ya.
good one.
Thank you. You too.